All right, let's break this down. Have you ever been in a meeting, a conversation, or even just a group chat, and you knew the right answer? You saw the flaw in someone's logic. You had the perfect piece of information, and every fiber of your being was screaming, "Correct them! Show them how smart you are!" It's a powerful urge, right? This need to prove our intelligence, to get that little hit of validation that comes from being right. We spend years learning, reading, sharpening our minds, and it feels almost like a betrayal to just keep it to ourselves. But what if I told you that in the real game of power, influence, and strategy, that urge is your single greatest weakness? What if the most powerful move you can make is to let them be wrong? To let them think you're a little slow, a little naive, maybe even a bit dumb? To the average person, this sounds like self-sabotage. But to someone who understands strategy on a deeper, more Machiavellian level, it's the sharpest weapon in the arsenal. In a world completely obsessed with looking clever, the person who masters the art of playing dumb is the one holding all the cards. Think about it. Power isn't really about being the smartest person in the room. It's about controlling the room. And you can't control a room that's actively defending itself against you. The moment you reveal your intelligence too quickly, you've essentially painted a giant target on your back. It's like showing your entire hand in a high-stakes poker game before the betting has even started. What have you gained? A fleeting moment of feeling superior? Great. But what have you lost? Everything. Suddenly, you're not just a person in the room anymore. You're a threat. People start competing with you, even if they don't realize it. They get defensive. They feel insecure. That person you just corrected? They don't respect you more. They resent you. They're now looking for ways to undermine you, to find a flaw in your next argument. Others in the room who might have been allies now see you as a rival. They start preparing counter-arguments for anything you say. They talk about you when you're not there. Why? Because you showed them your biggest weapon, your mind, and you did it for free. So what does the true strategist do? They bury it. They let people make assumptions. They let them think they're harmless, a little inexperienced, maybe even soft. And while everyone else is posturing and fighting for the spotlight, the strategist is in the shadows, watching, listening, and calculating. They let the noise and the ego of the room serve as their cover. Then, when the stakes are highest, when it actually matters, they step in and flip the entire dynamic on its head with a single sentence, a single question, a single move that no one saw coming. That isn't stupidity. That's performance art. Most of us are absolutely addicted to validation. We can't stand being underestimated. It feels like a personal insult. If someone thinks we're slow, our ego flares up and we rush to prove them wrong. Actually, I knew that. Well, to correct you on that point, here's the real answer. And in that moment, as Machiavelli would say, you've just handed over the keys to your own castle. Congratulations. You've proven you're smart, but you've also become completely predictable. By reacting instantly, you've revealed your entire playbook. People now know what you value, being seen as intelligent. And if they know what you value, they know exactly how to manipulate you. They can bait you with incorrect information just to watch you react. They can flatter your intelligence to get you to lower your guard. And even worse, the very person you were trying so desperately to impress doesn't actually respect you more. They've just cataloged you. You're now the smart guy, another ego-driven intellectual who needs to be right. Instead of becoming a player who controls the game, you've just volunteered to be a piece on the board. The master strategist flips this entire script. They welcome being underestimated. They let the world assume they're naive, average, maybe even a little distracted. And while everyone is busy with their assumptions, the strategist is doing the real work. They're studying the people in the room. They're mapping out the social dynamics. They're getting closer and closer to the weak points, the insecurities, the hidden agendas. Because there is a special kind of silence that only the truly strategic possess. It's not a silence born from ignorance. It's a silence born from immense restraint. Sun Tzu famously wrote, "Appear weak when you are strong, and strong when you are weak." Machiavelli took this concept and applied it in a much more personal, and you could say, a far more vicious form. He didn't just advocate for appearing weak. He understood that you should actively let other people believe they have power over you. Let them get comfortable. Let them get arrogant. Because the moment they do, they get sloppy. This entire tactic works because of a simple human flaw: ego inflation. When people believe they're the smartest, most powerful person in the room, their grip loosens. They stop analyzing and start performing. They brag. They overshare. They reveal secrets to show off how much they know. They let their flaws hang out because they don't perceive any threats. And who is sitting there, quietly soaking it all in? The so-called fool. The one they dismissed 10 minutes ago. This is why playing dumb is so incredibly potent. It essentially invites honesty from your enemies. It disarms your rivals. It lowers the collective guard of everyone around you, making your final move when it comes seem almost miraculous. People won't see it as a calculated strategy they should have seen coming. They'll see it as a shocking turn of events from the last person they ever expected. And that makes you not just effective, but unforgettable. You've seen this play out 1,000 times if you know what to look for. In a tense negotiation, it's the person who keeps asking seemingly simple, almost dumb questions. Can you just walk me through that one more time? I'm a little slow on this. They let the other side talk, and in their attempt to educate the fool, they reveal their deadlines, their internal pressures, their non-negotiables. Then, at the very end, the fool makes one quiet, precise offer that cuts through everything and wins the deal. That wasn't luck. That was a masterclass in selective intelligence. You see it in the workplace, in friend groups, in any social hierarchy. There's almost always a jockeying for position, a fight to be seen as the alpha, the leader, the most dominant person. It's exhausting to watch, and even more exhausting to participate in. And here's the secret. The person making the most noise is almost never the one with the real power. The real alpha is often the one who seems removed from the game entirely. By pretending to be unbothered, slow to react, or even a little socially awkward, you effectively pull yourself out of the direct line of fire. You're no longer seen as a competitor for the throne, which means you get a ringside seat to the entire drama. From this vantage point, you see everything clearly. You see who is desperate for attention. You see who is insecure and overcompensates with loudness. You see who flatters the powerful and who gossips about the weak. You see all the alliances and all the fractures. You are mapping the entire battlefield while everyone else is busy fighting in the trenches. And once you have that map, you know exactly where to apply a little bit of pressure to flip the entire structure upside down. You don't win by joining their game of overt dominance. You win by ending it with a subtle realignment that they never, ever see coming. This principle becomes devastatingly effective in the world of romance and seduction, an area where so many people make their worst strategic mistakes. The common approach is to try and impress, You go on a date and it feels like a job interview. You list your accomplishments. You tell your best stories. You try to prove your worth, your intelligence, your value. You're essentially laying all your cards on the table in the first 5 minutes, hoping they like what they see. But the most magnetic, the most desirable person is rarely the one who tries the hardest. They are elusive, not dumb, but unreadable, not clueless, but disinterested in the game of mutual impressing. By pretending not to notice the subtle tests, not to care about winning their approval, not to compete with any potential rivals, you trigger a level of curiosity and obsession that trying to win them over never could. People don't fall for the person they have figured out. They fall for the puzzle they can't solve. The moment you stop trying to prove yourself, you become the prize they feel they need to earn. You're not chasing. You're creating a gravitational pull. But let's be crystal clear about something. Pretending to be foolish is not the same as being passive. This isn't about being a doormat. It's not weakness. It's a mask. And it's a mask worn by someone who is paying more attention than anyone else in the room. The silent man can be mistaken for a coward, but only if he's genuinely not paying attention. The Machiavellian strategist, however, is always alert. Every word you say around them is filed away. Every assumption you make about them feeds their next move. They may appear slow on the uptake, but in their mind, they've already calculated 5 different ways to dismantle your position while you were too busy explaining yourself. We live in a world that is incredibly loud. Everyone is obsessed with being right, with having a take, with making sure their voice is heard. Social media has trained us to believe that the person who speaks the most, the loudest, and the most confidently is the one who is winning. Silence is interpreted as weakness, ignorance, or a lack of conviction, and that is exactly why the tactic of strategic stupidity is more powerful now than ever before. In this climate of fragile egos and constant noise, the person who holds their tongue, the person who listens more than they speak, becomes a black hole of mystery. Think about what happens. People get uncomfortable with the unknown, so when they can't read you, they start projecting. They project their own fantasies, their own insecurities, their own intentions onto you. The arrogant man will assume you're silent because you're intimidated by him. The insecure woman will assume you're quiet because you're judging her. The manipulator will see your silence as a sign of weakness to be exploited. In every case, they stop reacting to who you are and start revealing who they are. You become a mirror reflecting their own inner workings. And that is how the strategist collects data without ever having to ask a question. They let people willingly expose their entire psychological profile through their assumptions. Let's paint a picture. Imagine you walk into a room filled with ambitious people. They're posturing, debating, loudly sharing opinions, each one trying to subtly, or not so subtly, establish themselves at the top of the food chain. You, however, decide to play the fool. You stay quiet. You nod. You listen intently. You don't offer an opinion unless you're directly asked. And even then, it's something simple and non-committal. Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it. Now watch what happens. One guy, the classic braggart, will start talking at you, using you as a soundboard to prove how much he knows. He'll reveal his need for validation. Another person, the quiet manipulator, will see you as shy and harmless. They'll drop their guard around you, maybe even share a piece of sensitive gossip, thinking you're a safe person to confide in. A third, the aggressive alpha, will try to steamroll you with a joke at your expense, thinking you're an easy target to establish dominance over. In the space of an hour, all of them have revealed their primary tactics to you. None of them realize that you've been recording everything. Then, weeks later, When a real opportunity arises, you make your move. You neutralize the braggart with a quiet question that exposes the one detail he overlooked. You sidestep the manipulator by using the very piece of information they foolishly gave you. You disarm the alpha not by fighting him, but by subtly aligning others against his aggressive strategy, using the resentment you saw him create. You take each of them apart with a single, precise move, crafted from the weapons they themselves handed to you. That is not luck. That's not passive. That is Machiavellian deception at its absolute highest level. Let the fool run headfirst towards the trap. Let the strategist be the one who convinced them it was a shortcut to a party. There's a brutal irony to intelligence. The moment you put it on display, you start to lose control over it. It becomes a public commodity, something for others to test, to challenge, to disprove, or to tear down. But when your intelligence is hidden, it becomes a shadow, something people might sense but can never quite pinpoint. They feel a depth to you, but they can't see the source. They don't know where the threat is coming from or when it might hit. That isn't weakness. That is dominance in camouflage. This isn't just about being quiet. It's about deliberately engineering your presence through the art of understatement. For example, instead of asserting your opinions like commandments, master the art of asking questions that lead others to reveal their beliefs. Let them do the talking. Let them feel like they're the ones educating you. Then, through a single, subtle redirection or a quiet insight, you can use their own words, their own logic, to corner them. That's true power. You didn't argue with them. You simply handed them a shovel and let them dig their own hole. Another powerful tool in this arsenal is selective confusion. Strategically not understanding something is one of the sharpest tactics you can deploy. Phrases like, "I'm sorry, I must be missing something. Could you explain that again?" are not admissions of ignorance. They are invitations for your opponent to overextend themselves. You draw out longer explanations, which often expose how poorly they understand their own position. You feign ignorance so they feel more confident, more in control, and in that state of superiority, they give you everything. Behind your mask of confusion, you are collecting psychological fingerprints, their patterns of speech, their level of arrogance, their intellectual blind spots. They think they've won your respect, when all they've really done is hand you the schematic to their entire operating system. This leads to the ultimate form of invisible rule, letting others lead while you steer. Most smart people feel an overwhelming urge to grab the steering wheel in any situation. But the master strategist knows it's far more effective to sit in the passenger seat and control the directions. Let others speak first in meetings. Let them propose the initial plan. Let them believe they are guiding the conversation. Then, with a slight nudge here, "That's a good point. Have we considered how X might react?" A gentle suggestion there. What if we tried it this way to avoid that potential issue? Or even just a calculated hesitation that makes them second-guess themselves. You end up steering the outcome exactly where you wanted it to go, without anyone ever realizing you were driving. This requires a level of emotional discipline that is almost superhuman, especially when it comes to insults. What do you do when someone underestimates you to your face? When they laugh at you? When they make a smug remark? The instinct is to defend, to explain, to react. The Machiavellian move is to do nothing. Absorb it. Let it happen. Because every insult they throw, every joke they make at your expense, is a confession. It tells you exactly what they fear. It tells you what they find threatening. It reveals where their pride lives and where their armor is thinnest. And while they're laughing, feeling superior, you are quietly sharpening your blade, patiently waiting for the moment when you can show them that you weren't the fool. You were the historian, documenting their every weakness. This tactic isn't just a modern psychological trick. History is a graveyard of powerful men who underestimated the wrong fool. Julius Caesar postured as a man of the people, a populist hero whose theatrics made the aristocratic Senate laugh. They dismissed him as a clown for the mob, right up until he crossed the Rubicon and the entire Roman Republic was his. In the early 20th century, Vladimir Lenin was dismissed by the Tsar's regime as an irrelevant, radical intellectual scribbling away in exile. They ignored him. While they ignored him, he quietly studied, waited, and built his support until he took down their entire empire in a single revolution. Liu Bang, who would go on to found China's great Han dynasty, actively played the part of a coarse, hard-drinking village jokester. His rivals, polished and aristocratic, saw him as completely incapable of leadership. He became emperor. What do they all have in common? They mastered the art of being beneath the game until they owned the whole board. This is the essence of Machiavellian brilliance. It is not dominance through brute force, but conquest through misdirection. However, there is a profound danger here, and Machiavelli himself would issue a stark warning. You must be the master of the mask, not its servant. If you pretend to be a fool for too long, two things can happen. First, people start to genuinely believe you are one, and the opportunities to act may pass you by. But far more dangerously, you might start to believe it too. This is the greatest risk, forgetting that the mask is a tool, not your identity. You must always hold your edge in private. Keep reading, keep refining your thoughts, keep sharpening your observations. Train your mind so that when the time finally comes to drop the illusion, you don't stumble forward in confusion. You step forward as a precision weapon that nobody saw coming. So you have to ask yourself a serious question. Are you using your intelligence to chase short-term validation, to win pointless arguments, and to prove yourself to people who don't ultimately matter? Or are you willing to hide that intelligence, to wear the mask of the common man, and to use it only when it can fundamentally change the outcome of the game? The most powerful person in the room is rarely the one talking the most, or shining the brightest, or correcting the loudest. It's the one who is watching, the one who is measuring, the one who plays dumb because they've already written the ending. The biggest advantage a strategist can ever have is letting other people walk straight into a trap they believe was their own idea. Fools are laughed at. Geniuses are attacked. But the man who can hide his genius behind the mask of a fool, he becomes king. So let them talk. Let them underestimate you. Let them lower their guard and feel superior. Let them invite you closer, thinking they're in control. And then, when the silence is heavy and the moment is right, you end the game in one quiet, precise move that leaves them wondering how they could have been so blind.